Welcome to today's Global E-commerce Leaders Forum webinar, A Path Ahead, Crafting a Cross-Border E-commerce Strategy in Response to Today's Environment. I'm your host, Jim Okamura. We look forward to hearing from our featured speaker today, Travis Hurd, Head of Finance, Operations, and Strategy at Outerknown. Thank you to our sponsor, Flow, and we'll hear shortly from the Flow CEO, Rob Keve. But first, we want to thank our audience for taking the time to join us today. We are excited to gather the Guelph community together for the first time since our successful LA conference in February. Here's a few things of what we've been up to since then. Our New York conference is scheduled for October 1st, and we're obviously closely monitoring the state of in-person events, so we will update our community as we know more. Secondly, Guelph has launched the Global E-commerce Tech Talks, which includes a series of webinars such as today's, as well as a podcast series available on all major podcast platforms. Two of our first podcast episodes tie to our third initiative, the launch of our China research. Guelph's China research is a follow-up to our 2017 study and is the compilation of interviews with executives across our community, along with a survey of Chinese consumers. And finally, we will be launching a survey to the Guelph community in the coming weeks as we ask for your participation to monitor the state of global and cross-border e-commerce. In summary, we have several initiatives to help brands and retailers rethink and act upon their global e-commerce strategies, and we hope you lean in even more. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have further ideas or suggestions. Let me just take you through a few housekeeping items here for those of you on the line. Note that in your top right-hand side, the navigation for Q&A polls and handouts. If you want to ask a question, please click on the Q&A side, and you can see in the bottom where you can type in your question. We have people who are monitoring this, behind, and we will use that in the Q&A section at the end. For handouts, the handouts we will have available for download in this tab. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Kent Allen, who will take it from here.
Thanks, Jim. This is Kent Allen, along with Scott Silverman and Jim Okamura. I'm one of the three co-founders of Guelph. And first, I just want to do a quick thanks, shout out to the leaders in the healthcare world, as well as the business leaders who are going to be leading the reopening of economies around the world. Lastly, I'd like to thank Rob and the team at Flow for sponsoring, and to our guest speaker, Travis Hurd from Outerknown, as well as the Guelph audience for joining us. So today, I'm going to open with a quick overview of some global e-commerce slides we've been discussing this month with folks in the Guelph community. I'll include some insights about emerging shopping behaviors that are framing the path ahead. One quote last week from a popular Guelph speaker really summed up what we've been hearing as we've been talking to folks over the last month or so. Digital isn't the sideshow anymore around here. It's the main show. Economic downturns have often accelerated trends. Most of us, I believe, will agree that the pandemic has done so in a historic manner. It's hard to believe that the infamous retail apocalypse was over 3 years ago. Today, store-based retail chains are suffering yet another body blow. Meanwhile, global brands and local retailers, they were all less impacted in 2017. But now we see local retailers reeling from closures. This impact is painful everywhere, and especially in regions like Latin America, whereas the chart on the right highlights, most retail sales are still local and still offline. The path ahead will see more offline shoppers in emerging markets like LATAM come online for the first time, and they'll stay online. More shoppers, young and old, well-off and less so, will be shopping cross-border as national and local options disappear. The rise of the direct-to-consumer e-commerce is another accelerating trend, both from the digital natives that are highlighted in the eMarketer data on the left, as well as global brands that are broadening their investment from traditional wholesale to global direct-to-consumer. E-commerce growth is also expanding to the next level as rural and older shoppers in mature markets like China, Germany, and the UK shop more online. Some are calling this trend the rise of the silver surfer. The takeaway here is that the global direct-to-consumer brands and established digital native brands are going to emerge stronger and will thrive as e-commerce retains much of the share it's gained in recent months. Store-based retail and local retailers will continue to struggle. The path ahead will also be a multi-platform world where direct-to-consumer brands will thrive globally by working with cross-border platform partners like Flow, with other large global distribution marketplace platform partners like Amazon, Alibaba, the regional guys like Linio and Mercado Libre in Latin America, and with their e-commerce platform partners. I'd like to thank Indy's team at Signify who shared some of this data. And we've been seeing a lot of this cross-border data coming from folks throughout the Guelph community. It really underscores the recent growth that we've been seeing in cross-border. Some of the Guelph community told us that the trade wars were actually a blessing in disguise. We've heard a lot about trade wars and now the global pandemic. The takeaway there is that we're really in a global marketplace. Those that have diversified their supply chains in response to the trade wars have been able to more quickly react to the global pandemic. We've also been talking to Guelph leaders in the Guelph community about how they're engaging stay-at-home shoppers. Live streaming is yet another trend that we see accelerating. We also expect to see more video and chat-based customer service as universal consumer behaviors become characteristic of the path ahead, even as we see shelter in place subside. Speakers at Guelph events often stress the importance of investing in cross-border as a market diversification strategy. Rob will explore that theme in more detail, so I'll hold off on going deeper there. But they also stress that many customer segments have similar purchase behaviors regardless of the market that they live in. So a couple of quick takeaways from this Boston Consulting Group study. Interestingly enough, this is US data, but the research teams made a point that the data they found correlated quite highly across mature markets like Japan, Canada, and France. Shoppers in the more mature markets with similar demographic profiles are reacting similarly to the pandemic. Not called out in the headline on this slide is that 64% actually plan no changes in their purchasing behaviors due to the pandemic. This is significant because many of these segments already over-index as online shoppers. What else have we heard as we've been talking to the Guelph community? Wealthier shoppers will continue spending on luxury, but will spend less overall. They'll focus their spending on purchasing classics. Aspirational shoppers will also buy the classics. They'll trade up on occasion in order to treat themselves to a special purchase. We also heard about revenge spending by consumers weary of COVID-19 related constraints on their freedoms. This pent-up demand is why we're seeing a fashion bounce in both domestic and cross-border sales in recent weeks. Lastly, we'd like to stress that building trust is more important than ever. Trusted brands will be the winners in the months and the years ahead. Cross-border e-commerce has grown over the years as online shoppers have bought directly from trusted brands to avoid buying counterfeits. But authenticity means more today. Shoppers expect transparent communications, and they want more assurances about where and how their orders are being fulfilled. Sustainable practices build trust as well, and this is another accelerating trend that we believe is going to define the path forward. Consumers increasingly want to know that brands that they patronize are taking responsibility for actions that span global supply chain communities, both the products and the people making the products. Leaders in the Guelph community have been doing a good job of building more strategic relationships with suppliers, in large part as part of their renewed focus on building sustainable business practices. Now these relationships are paying off as e-commerce leaders that have been working more closely with their global supply partners are able to get back on track more quickly. I'm going to leave it to Travis to expand on the importance of sustainability to the path ahead. You know, I focus mostly in this brief opening on the accelerating trends, but I'd like to close by mentioning a decelerating trend as well. Spending on personal services like spas and experiences like adventure travel. One big unknown in the path forward is where the billions of dollars that have been projected to be spent by global consumers on these service-based experiences will be reallocated. So that's the end of the quick start here. Before I segue over to Rob and to Travis, I want to do a quick poll. So let me go over to the polls, and I'm going to open up a poll, just trying to get a better feeling on what you guys have been seeing out there. So I'm going to open up the poll. You should see it now. What we found is a conservative estimate has seen that there's about a 10% lift in cross-border sales. We've seen reports a lot more. what are you guys seeing? So you should all see the poll there, and I'm starting to see some answers come in. It's been interesting that we've seen, over the years, tending, or the percentage of growth has certainly been growing, I'd say in the last 3 to 4 years especially, and as we've been seeing more direct-to-consumer brands come online as well. So again, want to thank everybody for joining us today. Really looking forward to having Rob and Travis join us. I'm going to leave the poll open for just a few more minutes, and again, encourage you guys to let us know what you're seeing. Okay, let's see. We're getting some good responses in here. It's almost a perfect symmetrical curve here. Certainly people are seeing flat to 10% growth, and the folks seeing 30 plus is almost equal. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the poll here. And I'd like to turn it over to Rob now.
Great. Thank you very much, Kent. Welcome everybody to today's webinar brought to you by Guelph and Flow. It gives me great pleasure to present to you and to be joined by our guest speaker today, Travis Hurd. Travis is Head of Finance, Operations and Strategy at Outerknown, the brilliant brand that most of you will be familiar with, founded by Kelly Slater, the world-class surfer. So thank you for joining us today, Travis.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So we have a few slides, both on how to build a cross-border strategy and build a business that's configured for a global market, and to do so specifically in response to today's COVID environment and how to position yourselves beyond that. We've got rich with data, rich with insights, rich with lessons learned. So without further ado, why don't we dive into it? Travis, would you like to introduce yourself and Outerknown a bit further for the audience in case some of them haven't yet purchased their first Outerknown product?
Definitely. Well, thanks for everyone for attending, and thanks to Rob and Scott and Jim and Keve for putting this together. My name is Travis Hurd. I'm CFO, COO at Outerknown. Outerknown was founded a little over 5 years ago by Kelly Slater to reimagine how we can create sustainable clothing. And he came to us and asked the question, what are we wearing and where is it coming from? And it's a simple question that 5-6 years ago was kind of being asked behind closed doors and not as much within the outside world. And so we put together a business plan and a brand that really embodied what the values that we wanted to operate under. And within that, it was products that were made with recycled and regenerated materials, made with using fair labor practices, and all done in a way that is both quality first as well as styles that we want to wear. So it really with a coastal vibe. So we created Outerknown to truly be at the forefront of innovation and style within the sustainable world. Fast forward 5 years, and we have a thriving men's and women's business online, as well as through a couple retail locations and through some select wholesale partners. And with Kelly's global footprint as a global citizen, we have demand for our products across the globe, from Japan, Australia, Europe to Latin America as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Travis. So here are the 5 areas we'd like to touch on over the next 45 minutes. For those of you joining from brands or retailers or omnichannel merchants, trying to answer these questions, both from Outerknown's personal experience of what they've done over the last few years and how they've been so successful, and also Flow's general perspective across our merchant base, what's worked, why go global, when to do it, what the challenges are of building a global cross-border business, how do you do it in a localized fashion with localized shopping experience for consumers, and most importantly, what are the outcomes? A few quick words on Flow. Flow is a software as a service platform that sits on top of existing e-com platforms, Magento, Demandware, Shopify, proprietary platforms, and it's a turnkey solution for all aspects of selling globally. So once a client has integrated, as you'll see from Outerknown's case, their product pages and search pages are all localized for local currency, nicely rounded for maximum conversion rates. They can toggle margins and FX rates and merchandise by country. It supplies the duty and tax rates for international shipping, so consumers can buy with confidence instead of the awful shopping experience that I'm sure we've all had, where you purchase, duties unpaid, and then a carrier is on your doorstep, usually weeks later, demanding a big fat sum for fees and duties and tax. We avoid that by surfacing that to checkout so that our clients can pre-collect duties and taxes. We integrate many different shippers so that brands can offer consumers fast or cheap international shippers and optimize between the two for savings as well as better customer experience. Fourthly, we provide localized checkout, which means not only a nice translated checkout for consumers around the world to buy with confidence, but also the right payment methods. So in Germany, making sure that German customers could pay with Sofort or SEPA. In Holland, maybe they're paying with Ideal. In China, they're certainly paying with WeChat Pay and Alipay. So Flow provides all of that as a turnkey solution. And then to wrap it all together, we've built a optimization platform on top of that so that our brands can find the right configuration settings by country to maximize sales. And our client success team usually lean in and run these tests for them based on the best practices we've seen and where we expect to see greatest lift. That's Flow. We're a 5-year-old business, very fast growing, working with some of the largest brands in the world, both digital native and traditional. And here's a select few of the ones who have joined us recently. So without further ado, let's dive into why go global in the first place. Surely we could sit focused on our own domestic markets without ever needing to go global, or could we? Travis, would you like to share your experience at Outerknown?
Yeah, so it's for us, global was something that we sought to embrace from the beginning, with Kelly Slater as a founder and having such a presence worldwide. It was really important for us to capture and present the brand, especially with our mission, across the entire globe. And obviously, the easiest and best way to do that is through e-commerce and through the internet. When we initially launched, we launched with a different company to cover all of our international e-commerce. And there were many different challenges. I think international e-commerce, on first thought, is daunting. It's one thing to have a beautiful website that tells the stories on your products and advances your mission and is very high profile for international visitors. It's an entirely another thing to create an experience that's both robust and mirrors what you hope to achieve within your store. And so for us, it was a no-brainer from the beginning to roll out our entire product catalog and experience internationally. Kelly has millions of followers on social media. We have established a strong followership as well. And we wanted to make sure that anyone, whether they're in Brazil or Japan or South Africa, was able to purchase and enjoy the products that we produce. it became something that, as we stepped through the first couple years of our existence, there were a lot of challenges around calculating duties, making sure shipping was both trackable and delivered on time, and also just cost, making sure that it was cost effective and delivered in a local currency with a local experience that most represents the localized shopping experience within each country. And so those were some of the challenges of why why going global wasn't just quite as turnkey as it has become now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I didn't upload my picture with the surfboard because it would have been, my physique is too similar to Kelly's. It would have been hard to distinguish between the two. So across our clients, why do they go global? Generally, it's because of the amount of traffic either hitting their site or the potential for global traffic to be attracted to their site. And here are just 5 of the many drivers of that traffic to site. 1, search is by its very definition global, and so brands looking for categories or looking for brands or similar categories often come across the brand and end up on their site unknowingly. Mobile commerce, even more so. It's much easier to find through mobile browsing brands that you hadn't been familiar with or in other geographies. 2, social media, both influencers, celebrity founders, and general postings all drive consumers in this connected world to sites through referrals, recommendations, reviews. And so before you know it, you find double-digit percentage traffic hitting sites from countries around the world. 4, many countries have much lower customer acquisition costs than in the domestic market. And so it really provides a great arbitrage to be able to generate traffic from those countries. And in many cases, they're easier to reach, less competition, fewer bids for AdWords. And as long as your platform and your fulfillment can reach them, it's a great opportunity to capitalize on this low-hanging fruit. And fifthly, oftentimes the brands we work with have already set up some channels for international distribution, wholesale, partners, JVs, joint marketing arrangements, and that builds brand awareness in those markets and creates end consumer pull from their site itself. And on the right-hand side, you may see a chart showing many different flags, and that indicates the percentage of consumers in those markets who have made cross-border purchases, at least one, in recent times. I think the period was 3 months. And you can see from that Australia, Canada, France, Germany, UK, China lead the world with over 67% of their consumer base happily purchasing cross-border. So gone are the days where purchasing from a product outside of your domestic market is anathema, is tricky, is complicated. It's becoming increasingly commonplace. And we're quickly getting to the point where it's not just commonplace, you do it without thought. It's the same as your domestic market. You're just searching for the best fit category or brand for who you are. A few words about today's climate. Today, as we all know, is very different than it was 3-4 months ago, even. Not just consumer behavior, but us as merchants, us as brands are positioned very differently. And what we're finding is, as we speak to the market, we speak to merchants, and we poll consumers, there are 3 opportunities for brands to capitalize on the flux in today's market. One is converting the existing traffic from overseas. You already have site traffic. It almost certainly is converting at a much worse rate than your domestic market if you were to look at traffic as a numerator and sales as the denominator. And there's a great opportunity to just close that gap. If your international traffic could purchase as freely as domestically, there would be a big low-hanging fruit for revenue to capitalize on. 2, the product categories that have been popping initially in the first 4 weeks of COVID and now in the most recent 4 or 6 weeks are quite different from what it was in January and February, and we'll come on to talk about that. And thirdly, there's a very interesting point that we're hearing a lot about, which is geographic diversification. Can we really afford to be singularly focused on a domestic market when the domestic market can fall off the cliff? Can we be singularly focused on retail and wholesale and channels when digital is at the moment the only channel that's being purchased through? And so there's a great opportunity in thinking about global commerce to diversify your revenue streams. Digging into these briefly, one, this chart shows the blue bar shows the amount of international site traffic hitting, on average, the Internet Retailer 1000. We're missing the number, I think, but at the top of that chart, it said 34%. 34% was the average international traffic hitting sites. Yours may be slightly higher, slightly lower, but on average, it's very substantial. And yet the percentage of that that converts into sales remains low. On average, direct to brand sales is around 6%. So the opportunity is to close that gap, to have international consumers convert at a similar rate to domestically. And if we could do that together, that's 28% of untapped traffic that could be converted into sales. Why do they not convert? It's there's nothing surprising here, I don't think. It's all those reasons on the left and more. It's being sold oftentimes in USD, in dollars, without showing domestic currency, a local currency for the consumer. Many times it doesn't display duties and taxes in the right way, so it puts them off. Most times duty and taxes aren't displayed at all, and so it begs questions for consumers and puts them off, or worse still, has them pay an unknown amount on the doorstep, which both reduces the first-time purchase rate and has an enormous negative impact on the lifetime value, the repeat purchase rate. Shipping can be slow and expensive. Payment methods for international customers often aren't available. Language is sometimes a problem at checkout, and questions around customer service and returns and refunds. All of these add up in combination to putting consumers off internationally from purchasing. So the opportunity is to address all of those and have your site traffic convert into buying customers. And Flow enables that through the turnkey solution I mentioned earlier, which sits on top of your e-com platform, does product localization, duty and tax calculation and display, optimizing international shipping, manages your checkout through pre-translated checkouts with many payment methods, and then has the technology for optimizing the perfect settings by country. I'm talking fast, so I want to get through this content, and we'll happily share these slides afterwards for you to dig through. The second opportunity in a COVID economy is that international is popping. It's popping quicker than domestic. Total e-commerce in the last few months has grown by 21% relative to the same period last year. Only 12% of that is domestic e-commerce, and interestingly, 33% of that is international. So there are many reasons for that we don't need to get into now, but the end result is that consumers internationally have a higher propensity to purchase cross-border, and that segment is growing quicker than it was at any time before, and COVID is accelerating that. And on the right-hand side, you can see what we were referring to earlier as the product categories that are doing extremely well. It has been very volatile. It changes week on week. So it's probably best to just look at the cumulative change. This period to date, this is, I think, until 3/3, relative to the same period last year. The categories that are doing well: leisure, outdoor, electronics, collectibles, parts, general, and then the obvious, some basics. But beyond that, home decor still growing at 57% relative to before. Luxury goods initially was trading relatively poorly through March, but in the last 4 weeks, we've seen that really accelerate and is now cumulative 45% up as a segment. So all of this information is available. I'll happily share it. I think the information on the right comes to you brought by Signified. And thirdly, geographically, the point about geographic diversity. what if we could generate revenue across many core markets and not be singularly threaded on just the US domestic market? And on the left-hand side, you see data showing you what it looks like by country, and that's tabulated on the right. And you can see there that Australia and New Zealand is now up 80% relative to this time last year. Germany, which is by all measures copes with the crisis extremely well, is now up 64%. UK and US and France closely followed behind them. So the point being that this is one crisis, and unfortunately, I imagine there'll be other changes to our macroeconomy over the next few years. The more we as brands are positioned to generate revenue across many regions and many countries, the more we're diversified and can capitalize on those economies as they grow. And finally, this is some rich data that we've got on shipping. Shipping has obviously been disrupted by COVID. Postal more than express. You can see postal, 50% of the lanes at some point have been suspended, whereas on the express side, only 5%. Most lanes have had some impact to time delays, but we have plenty of data here that we happily share if you reach out, and we can show what the average time delay is by lane, by shipping service level. At Flow, we have the technology to optimize between them. So we've been working with our clients to toggle between standard carriers and express carriers, and to display the accurate delivery times and delivery windows so that consumers can continue to buy with confidence despite flux in the shipping networks. That was a whirlwind. I think now I'd love to hand back over to Travis to talk a bit about what's the right timing to think about going global.
Great. Yeah, it's it's definitely a crazy time right now that we're living in, and so I think the more ability that you have as a brand to be able to connect and ship and get product to your customers at their home, the better. And for us, like I said, I think we've always had aspirations of being on the world stage, and being able to deliver products. Is just the means of how to do it has been challenged until recently. And so with us, we knew that we wanted to align in our product portfolio worldwide to be able to deliver products to anywhere that we wanted them. And I think we always had a strong social following, and that continues to grow as we've launched women's last year. And we've also had strong international partners too, in Japan, Australia, and in Europe through the Ron Herman Japan team and the Mr. Porter team, and the Iconic in Australia. And so it was very important for us to be able to roll out a product offering that aligns with our omni-channel international strategy as well, not just throwing it up there with no concern or care for how our product showing up in Australia impacts their local markets, or Europe, or Japan. So it was something that we needed to step through appropriately, and have the tools to be able to determine what the right align the pricing internationally, as well as even align the product offering as well. As you guys are, I'm sure, familiar, the seasonality challenges that go along with the southern hemisphere versus the northern hemisphere poses many challenges as well, to make sure that you're selling the right product at the right time, and that you're also not discounting product on a seasonal calendar that is negatively impacting your partners across the globe. So that's, for us, it was an issue of making sure that the tools aligned with the timing and the product offering, because we knew that there was already demand for the brand just through Kelly's network and our global reach as a brand from launch.
Perfect. Thank you, Travis. And we'll come on to some of the important points you just raised around the challenges in a second. Please continue to ask questions through the Q&A button. We see some questions coming in already, and we'll make sure we leave time to answer them. From our perspective at Flow, as a cross-border e-com solution, we see across many clients reasons why they're ready to go, why they go global, and what the right timing is. Here are 5 signals. 1, traffic is high to your site, but conversion is low. We touched on that earlier, with brands seeing around 1/3 of their site traffic coming from international, but the conversion rate being low. 2, strong demand internationally for your goods or segments. Oftentimes in local markets, they can't get that product category or that brand, and so buying cross-border is their best option. 3rd, the need for diversification and overly reliance on domestic, which we covered earlier. 4th, capitalize on consumer awareness from other channels. We also touched on earlier, the more you have consumers with brand awareness in overseas markets, whether that's because they can purchase it through retail channels or wholesale or just general social awareness, the more it's an opportunity for you to capitalize on that awareness and sell to them directly. And finally, there's a strong segment amongst our customer base who are doing it as a means of preempting competition. They see them expanding, they see local competitors springing up, and they can steal a march on them by expanding into those markets with us. So Travis, you touched on some of the challenges around merchandising to different hemispheres and some of the logistic challenges. We'd love to hear a bit more from your perspective around, as you expand globally, as you sell cross-border, what are some of the gotchas that brands should be thinking about?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a couple of good questions that are coming in as well, both around scale and economics. I think first and foremost, we always want to put the customer first, and you always want to be talking about your products and presenting your customer experience in the way that is brand appropriate. For us, it's always been something where we want to have that online experience, much like any brand, be as seamless, as clear and straightforward as possible. It's very confusing for customers when they don't know what the pricing is, when they have to convert foreign currency, when they don't know what the duties and tax are, or they don't know what the shipping costs are, etc. And it's also confusing when they might see other products or other retailers carrying the same product at different price points, with different offerings, different sale prices, etc. And so for us, we needed to figure out how we could seamlessly create that experience that aligned our strategy all the way around. And I think the way that we were able to do that, or the challenges that we had to step through to be able to do that, was making sure that the right product is presented by country with the right pricing. I think localizing the pricing and localizing the expected duties and taxes that would go along with it allowed our customer service team to spend less time assisting those customers. Shipping, both visibility into shipping as well as the cost of shipping, is also a major hindrance. In the past and with previous providers, that was always it was very high, both the cost as well as even the pack out. It tended to have to go from one warehouse to a second warehouse to get repacked and then shipped to try to cut costs, and it just added days and was a really bad experience from a shipping visibility perspective. So we would have a lot more customers asking, "Where is my package that I purchased?" And it would be longer for them to be able to see when it would be expected. And then I think the other thing that always posed challenges was the duty and tax calculation, whether it's duties delivered paid or unpaid, and how and when you serve that up. I think each country is a little bit different. Some European countries like to see the single price of the list price with that included in it. Canada tends to, we've run tests where you can see whether including the duties and VAT in the list price adds conversion or removes from it. And I think that's been really helpful to customize the experience for the specific country, because there are very specific expectations by country on how things are priced and how the checkout goes. And I think the final element and the final challenge to it was making sure that, to one of the questions in our Q&A, making sure that we end up making a profit off of the sales that we do internationally. And the shipping costs, the flow shipping costs are actually have saved a tremendous amount of money, but it also allowed us to improve the customer experience to offer free international shipping for anything over our threshold right now is $200. So we were able to put together what those unit economics look like based off of the rate cards and shipping and margin that we have off of a standard order. So all of those kind of have aligned. Those challenges are the biggest things around international that we found, and kind of some of the solutions that we've been able to put in place to address them.
Perfect. Splendid. Thank you very much. Just to expand on that from the general perspective, most of the things that Travis just mentioned, we touched on earlier, and are the pain points, the points of friction for consumers. Seeing a site without local currency display, the local currency not being a nice rounded number, depresses conversion rates. Duties and taxes, as Travis mentioned, not being prepaid is a big depression of conversion rates. Shipping for international, it is usually super expensive, and delivery times can take weeks, if not longer. Massive depression both on conversion rate and repeat purchase rate. And the other ones we talked about, the payment methods, language, refunds, returns, customer service. We've conducted a few polls of international merchants and consumers. If you'd like access to our reports, please reach out afterwards. This is one just polled consumers on what are the barriers to cross-border shipping. And it's a lot of the experiences that Travis referred to at Outerknown. Shipping cost, delivery taking too long, duties and taxes, exchange rates, not understanding whether duties and taxes are included, site security and privacy issues, payment methods, service, and what have you. So these add up to really depressing the conversion rate. And when we refer back to site traffic on average being 34%, but sales being 6%, it's these points of friction that depress it. And we'll come on to talk about what we do as a solution and how Outerknown has capitalized on that. But it's addressing all of these. It's making sure that the shopping experience feels perfect, feels domestic-like, feels seamless. And if you can address all of these points of friction, the trade, the e-commerce should flow. Quite an intentional pun, and in fact, that's why we are called Flow, to address these points of friction. Travis, can we come back to talk about the fascinating case study of Outerknown, and how did you create such a great international shopping experience? And for those who haven't had a chance to do it, I'd encourage you, either when you're next abroad, or change your IP address to make it look like you're coming from overseas, or change the country picker on the Outerknown site so you can see how beautifully localized and thoughtfully done it has been.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I think our website, much like, well, now more than ever, but even from the beginning, our website was always the destination for the majority of people learning and purchasing Outerknown. And we wanted it to be more than just an Amazon-esque transaction. We wanted it to be much more brand appropriate and tell the story. But part of that, obviously, is as a business, you want a seamless checkout. And so, as I talked about a little bit before, by country, you have different nuances within each country, and the localization is very important, from what payment method, what currency, and what delivery method, and what duty and tax is being applied. So for us, we knew some of the challenges before, because before we were on Shopify. With Flow, we were on Magento with another competitor for international, and it was a major pain point. That being said, not having an international option wasn't an issue, or wasn't an option. So we decided that where we wanted to go first was to be able to control pricing, exclude products that weren't appropriate, offer as many payment methods as were appropriate for the local market, and be able to provide a checkout that was all inclusive. And I think one of the other things that was really important, we don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. And the only way you can truly get to the best practice of what works for your brand is to be able to test. And we've taken an approach from the beginning on trying to embrace technology and forward-thinking partners to be able to provide the tools to test what works best for our customer. What works best for our customer might not work best for other customers, but it just needs to be brand right and brand appropriate. So for us, it was very important. We needed to align our international pricing both from a current local currency, which is out of the box provided, as well as from a retail pricing structure for our partners that were international. And so we wanted to be able to do that by country and be able to localize it. So we've created many different experiences. If you're in Europe, you have a European or Eurozone experience. If you're in Canada, it's a Canadian experience. If you're in Australia, it's an Australian experience. Japan, similar. And now the UK is its own experience as well. And within those, there's different elements on what product you want to offer. We have some partnerships. We have a partnership with Breitling where we produce a Breitling watch that's Outerknown and Breitling together, and we don't want to sell that internationally. It's a high-priced item. We don't want to deal with any sales outside of the U.S. for this specific product. So we've been able to exclude those items internationally. Likewise, if we're selling trunks into Australia and wholesale, we've been able to exclude certain trunks from the Australian market so that we can launch them in the right way at the right time. These are kind of the tools that have allowed us to have a much more specific and catered experience within each of these countries. I think for us, we continue to work closely on testing and rolling out and embracing different payment methods, as well as different pricing strategies and shipping thresholds as well. And so that's kind of how we've crossed the bridge on how to deliver what we believe each local international customer wants.
Fantastic. It's been a great story, and we'll come on to talk about some of the success you've seen with it, both the economic success and the customer experience impact. A bit about the Flow offering and how it addresses this. I don't want to over-egg the pudding, but brief overview. With Flow, you get out of the box localized currency in 100 different currencies. We have rounding tools so that it will round to the best price point and the most obvious rounding point for consumers in that country, and it varies by country. As Travis was saying, whether duties and taxes should be included in prices before rounding or kept and displayed separately is all configured in the platform. You can target your catalog. So as Travis was saying, in Southern Hemisphere, you may target merchandise differently depending on their season relative to the Northern. Duties and taxes are all both calculated, displayed, and remitted on behalf of the merchant. We capture funds in 100 different currencies and across 100 different payment methods. And we do so with what's called local acquiring to make sure that accept rates are maximized and authorization rates are maximized without the higher decline rates that most merchants would see if they're trying to set up cross-border purchasing. And we have many different shippers with great rate cards that we offer our merchants so that they can benefit from those rate cards. But also, we've always tried to build the platform to be merchant friendly. And so if ever they want to bring their own rate card and use their own shippers, or in some other ways configure it, we've always encouraged that and want the merchants to find the best way of finding the best return for themselves. Going international isn't meant to be a brand statement. It's meant to be an economic return. And Flow has been geared from the outset to build the best ROI that a brand could look for, not just selling globally, but across anything. And so we'll come and talk about the results in a second. But optimizing the setting by country, leaning into our client success team who will tell you what's worked well, what hasn't, and what A/B tests to run on the Flow platform to maximize conversion rates is always a great way of getting to that end result. Flow is API first. It's built on many e-com platforms and also for proprietary e-com platforms. And we have clients who have gone live in as quick as 1 or 2 weeks and sold to the world from the outset. Selling to 1 country or 200 countries is just as easy because it's the toggle of a button on the Flow console. So Travis, let's come on to talk about the most important part, the money shot. And can you maybe share a bit about the results you've seen at Outerknown?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're one of the partners that they onboarded in 1 to 2 weeks. I think literally from signing the agreement to going live, I think it was 7 days. So it was very smooth. It was one of those surprising ones where it actually was as good or better than promised through the sales pitch. So our results have been really strong. I think I talked a little bit about the shipping costs coming down, and as a CFO, I always am worried about order economics, not just top line. And the shipping rates were an amazing improvement, which helped everything. It helps fuel everything else. We've continued to see our conversion and sales continue to go up. They at least matched our online domestic growth, and then even over the last, actually since COVID, it's been doubling what our domestic growth has been. So we continue to see demand, and I think the great thing about being a direct-to-consumer brand is once you kind of start getting your customers and start that flywheel going, and they have a good experience, they're going to come back more and more and more, and that's where we're at right now. The results continue to come in every time we're looking at our past performance. The international sales continue to be a larger and larger part of it. We're like I mentioned, we launched women's to accompany the men's business now a year ago, and the women's business is becoming stronger and stronger every day. So all in all, it's been a wonderful results-oriented experience, as well as just very, very positive from a learning experience as well. We're able to tap in and understand what marketing might be working best internationally as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And whilst Outerknown is one of our favorite clients, the results they see are not atypical. Many times we measure it by how much increase in international sales. Is the margin there? Is this profitable selling internationally? Can we help them with savings on the shipping side? And what's the overall lift both in traffic and conversion rate over time? And so as far as we're concerned, that is the only measure. The rest is just a means to an end. I think we've got 6 minutes left, and we've got a few questions in that we'd like to have time to answer. So maybe just a few seconds on what's next. Looking ahead, what does the next phase look like? How about at Outerknown, Travis?
For us, I mean, we are experiencing, as it was called earlier, a little bit of the fashion bounce ourselves. Our online business is growing significantly, especially once things kind of bottomed out at the end of March, and that's across domestic and international. We're excited for the future, and just continuing to promote and produce sustainable goods, and across all categories, and really driving our e-commerce business forward and communicating the positive messages and positive values that we've come to, that we were built on. So it's an exciting time for us, and we're really bullish on the future.
Fantastic. Great. Well, let's use the remaining minutes to answer as many questions as we can. A question from Faisal: do you offer and install the program to do all calculations of currency exchange, shipping, VAT, fees, customs and duties, and other expenses, if any? Yes, if the question is directed at Flo, we do all those calculations: exchange rates, duties, taxes, classification, restrictions, customs duty, and all of those are built into the platform. So they're fully automated, and happy to share more if you'd like to reach out. We'd appreciate hearing, I think this is for you, Travis, from Steve. We appreciated hearing you talk about the build out to support a great customer experience for your international customers. How much of that had to be done by Outerknown versus done by Flo, particularly around the website and associated technology?
Yeah, I think the build out was very easy, and I think even the day-to-day management has been. They have a great customer experience team at Flo, and we have there's a woman on my team who manages it day to day. But we really, again, it's a strong platform where we're able to look at the data and the A/B testing, and they come with a lot of recommendations on what we've seen working for other customers. Might be worth testing this A/B strategy here and seeing if it works for you. So it's been a minimal lift on our part. And just really tapping into a great program, a great platform with strong partners across duty calculation as well as shipping.
Thank you. Yeah, that's typical of our experiences. We partner very closely with the clients for a quick build out, measured in days or weeks, so that they can be live. And then after that, there shouldn't be any technical involvement. It should be completely plug and play. Everything can be controlled from the console, and our client success team lean in very closely to try to find the perfect settings for our clients. Another question from Steve. Travis, are you able to fill international orders in a profitable way? Obviously, it doesn't make sense to do it for the sake of doing it. It needs to remain profitable. How do you think about that, and how do you think about your cost and margin?
Yeah, I think it's like with any free shipping offering, it needs to make sense based off of the volume that we expect. And generally, we found that $200 is kind of that sweet spot for free shipping, for the free shipping offering. We personally have opted for the DHL Express offerings just as a customer experience during normal times. When we peak up during any sale period or holiday time, we layer in some of the other shipping options. But even with DHL Express, the rates are great, and the orders make sense economically as well.
Perfect. One final question before we wrap up. Both relate to fulfillment, one from Ben, one from Martin. Can we talk to the percentages standard versus express shipping? And are all of these done direct from the US, or is there any aggregation that takes place?
So for us, we fulfill directly from our 3PL. and we have daily pickups through DHL and scheduled pickups for others. So it's been pretty seamless there. It's not a direct integration with our 3PL for different reasons that I won't get into right now. But it ends up working through an FTP site with all the documentation and shipping labels, etc. It's been pretty smooth all the way around for the fulfillment side, and there's no, unlike some other providers who consolidate locally and then overbox and ship out, and then that adds a lot more time and a lot more complexity. This is all direct ship, one to one, and frankly, I think it's created just a much better and smoother and faster experience for our international customers.
Perfect. I'm going to hand back over to our host at Guelph, and just to say all of the contact details you need are posted on the screen here.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much. And, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And, we opened up the last poll just trying to get a little bit of a feel for where people are seeing orders come from. Travis, wanted to bounce that over to you real quickly. Have you guys seen any shifts in demand geographically? I know there's a seasonality element, for instance, Australia and the US are kind of very different seasons. So factoring in some of the seasonality, any observations that you've seen, Travis? And then Rob, I'll let you kind of finish up your perspective from the broader Flow client base. What are you seeing, Travis?
So overall, international is, I think over the last 6 weeks, it's up almost 100% over last year, and there's strong growth within Europe and Australia, particularly. There's always been strong. That's been our strongest areas as it stands. And I think that a lot of people, particularly within Europe, with all the shops closed and everyone being stay at home, they've been doing more online shopping and exploring more. So we're excited for that trend hopefully to continue, and think that the time and the stay at home actually drove more people to our site and more people to purchase in those regions particularly.
Got it. Yeah, and Rob, anything you guys are seeing as far as kind of shifting of demand patterns globally?
Similarly, the first point is PAL is changing by the week. It's now much more positive across the board than it was in March. 2, shipping time frames have also improved a lot. Initially, they were slow and disrupted. So now I think the consumers are buying with confidence, expectations are higher. And you saw my slide earlier about which geographies are popping. A lot of the European ones are coming out of lockdown and are popping, and some of the Asian ones now. So it's a great time to be thinking about selling to those regions.
And I think on that note, we'll shut things down. I want to thank everybody again. The poll pretty much backs you guys up. We're certainly seeing Canada and UK as the leading markets, and we do tend to see the English-speaking international markets being leaders in the cross-border space. So, I'll leave it at that. Again, Rob, Travis, thanks for joining us. As far as the Gulf community, we always love having you guys get directly engaged. Look for our survey where we'll probe into some of these questions and other questions that you guys are welcome to send us. So on that note, I want to thank the Guelph team and the Flow team. And again, Travis, appreciate your insights and congrats on the successes, and best of luck on the path ahead, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.